So, probably the most common, or what we think of as the most common type of theater space, audience-performer relationship, is the proscenium. It it was developed in the Renaissance as a result of perspective drawing, which you'll see as you look at the history, or if you haven't yet. It's it's associated with Broadway. It's called the picture frame theater. As you can see, there's this, these three sides to it. This is actually a double proscenium. You've got this proscenium here and the proscenium here. This is often, although it's not an arch per se, this is called the proscenium arch. It is the most common Broadway type of theater because it's the best space for scenery, because you have all this room back here in the wings to have things move in and out, and you also have a big fly loft where you can fly things in and out of the space. This is the space in which the fourth wall is most easily defined. The fourth wall is a concept, a very theatrical concept. If the fourth wall is up, then you're pretending that the audience is not there. You are engaging and you are talking to each other. You are not acknowledging the presence of the audience. If the fourth wall is down, then you do acknowledge the presence of the audience. This may seem odd, but I think if you think about it a little while, you'll understand what this means. So the box set is a set that came about when realism came about, and then my alarm's going off. Alexa, shut up. So the box set was a box, and it was a room with four walls, and you would just decide which wall you would remove. Well, the fourth wall is removed, and suddenly you can see in. So this is the space where the fourth wall works the best. Realism works very well because you can put a whole set on stage. You can have walls and what you might think of as a set, really, in this space, and it works very well in here. Second one is the thrust. As we look through these four spaces, we move from the farthest aesthetic distance to the closest aesthetic distance. So the farthest away you're going to be from the performers is in a proscenium. Then you get to a thrust. It's also called the three quarters because there are audiences on three quarters of the sides. This picture is angled on the sides. Often it's a square that thrusts out into the audience. Called three quarters because there's audience on all three sides. It increases the intimacy between the performers and the audience because there are just more people closer to the stage. Scenery becomes a little bit more difficult, and blocking becomes more tricky because you have to be careful how you turn, because somebody's going to be looking at your butt. If you're facing this way, and that might be what you want. The goal for blocking in a thrust is just to make sure that everybody can see at least one face at a time, and you take advantage of these lines where you stand people in front of each other. You wouldn't place two people in front of each other going this way because these people couldn't see the person who's standing over here. But when there's somebody standing here, you don't have to worry about sightlines from here. That's kind of an advanced concept, something that's not really important, but just interesting to note. Incidentally, this is a stage that is a takeoff on Shakespeare's Globe Theater. Very similar, has these upper levels of performance and this main entrance back here. This was also the space for which the Greek theater was a thrust space. So it's interesting to note, Shakespeare and the Greeks, some of the most important dramatic literature we have, were written to be performed in a thrust space. Sometimes you can tell if you read carefully where did the playwright intend for this play to be performed. Some of the best plays in the history of the theater were written to be performed by specific companies in specific spaces. And it's just interesting that some of the best plays that we have from our history were written to be thrust spaces. The arena is the next step in audience intimacy. It's also called theater in the round. This is seating over here. Scenery becomes even more tricky. You will never put up a wall in an arena. In a thrust space, you might put a wall back here if you wanted. This obviously is just part of the architecture of the theater, but you could put up a scenic element that is just a big back wall. In the arena, you would not do that. Just like called arena because it's just like sports arenas. It is the most intimate space because you have the closest proximity between performer and audience. Even the people way back here are going to be closer than the people who are, way back here. So it's it also has kind of an unconscious kind of feeling of communion, because not only can you see the performers, but you can see the people across here, the audience members. You can see each other if you choose to look that way. And that creates a communion with the audience. Tribal activities were believed to have been in circles, so it is the most communal, most intimate space. I love directing in the arena. It is tricky though. You have to be really careful about where you place people and have to be very precise. And obviously most of the time you don't want to look precise. You want the blocking to look natural, but it still has to be placed very carefully. See how this furniture is very low so that you could see over it. No walls here. Often the floor gets a treatment in the arena configuration because because you don't have much else to look at, so you do fancy treatments on the floor, and it can be very effective and very very simple but very effective. So that's the arena. That's the theater in the round. Now there's also another space just called a found space. A found space is often referred to as an environmental theater. It can be theater on the street corners and public parks. It can be a way to bring the theater to the people instead of making the people come to you. Usually not a lot of scenic elements, it's just theater outdoors often. It can also be, you can do a play in a specific location that is not a traditional performance venue that can be commenting on the action somehow. I worked with a theater company in Pennsylvania that produced a show, and they placed it in an abandoned steel mill because it was about the death of the steel industry in their town. So it was a very effective place to see this performance. So found space can be very effective, and it can be a useful way to take the theater to the people. Black box is the last space we'll talk about. It is just that. It is a probably pretty large room painted black in which you can change the seating configuration. What you're looking at here is a pretty well-equipped black box that looks like they have a decent lighting system. They have a grid. The ceiling will be a grid in which that you can hang lights over. So you have a whole lot of flexibility in how you light the area, as opposed to a proscenium where you just have these front of house and on stage lighting positions. I don't want to imply that the black box is like, ooh, awesome lighting always, and that proscenium is not. But you do have a lighting grid up top because you never know where the seats are going to be. They have this sort of L set up, it looks like here. Maybe there's even seats over there, so maybe this is kind of a thrust. You could arrange a black box in a proscenium, in a theater in the round, all on one side diagonally. You can do anything you want. As long as the risers can be moved, you can do whatever you want. Black boxes tend to have a small aesthetic distance because they are smaller spaces. A large black box would seat 300. A regular sized black box would seat around 100. So the black box space is the most intimate room, and you can change the configuration of the seating based on the needs of the play. So those are our different spaces. Next lecture we'll look at design specifically, and then we'll look at what each designer does.